This is Channel 2 News at noon.
Good afternoon, everyone. There's been a disastrous train derailment in Alabama, the worst accident in Amtrak history.
At least 26 people are dead after the Amtrak Sunset Limited jumped the tracks on a bridge and plunged into a bayou in the town of Saraland, that's just outside of Mobile, Alabama. For the latest now on this tragedy, we go live to reporter Darwin Singleton. Darwin joins us from WKRG-TV and will bring us up to date on this tragedy. Darwin?
It's a hot, steamy day here on the banks of the river in Mobile, Alabama. We are at the port of Chickasaw. It's an industrial port where bodies are being brought back after being retrieved from the wreckage of the Amtrak Sunset Limited. We have the official count now of 204 passengers and crew aboard that train. There have been 164 survivors. 26 have been confirmed dead, 14 unaccounted for. Right now you can see, this is live, you can see several bodies being removed. Boats are arriving with even more bodies. There are at least 21 on that concrete slab that you see before you, waiting to be loaded into some of the ambulances and hearses there. It's a scene that's likely to be repeated throughout this day. A steady stream of ambulances and hearses made their way to the edge of the Mobile River this morning, awaiting the arrival of boats bearing the victims of a deadly train derailment. Only hours before, Amtrak's new Sunset Limited, bound for Jacksonville, Florida, had just picked up passengers in Mobile, Alabama. Minutes later, the train left a trestle, plunging into a tributary of the Mobile River. Some cars went directly into the deep water, others began to burn. Call went out for help to rescue the more than 200 passengers believed to be aboard. But the wreck was in such a remote area, rescue workers had to get there by water or rail. So another Amtrak train was loaded with rescuers and sent to the site. It would be that very train that would transport most of the 126 survivors back to Mobile.
We don't know what caused the particular rail accident at this particular time, and we're continuing our investigation, as you well know.
Fatality?
This has been a major disaster in this area. They have not had one of this nature in a very, very long time, as I understand.
The rescue work at the scene is not yet over. There is one submerged car that has still yet to be broken into. They're trying to do that right now. That could account for the 14 unaccounted for. But right now, rescue work continues as more bodies are being retrieved from the wreckage of the Sunset Limited. That's all from Mobile, and now back to you.
Darwin Singleton, thank you for that report from Alabama. Well, as we told you, the Amtrak train was en route from Los Angeles to Miami, and one of the stops along that route is Jacksonville, Florida. This morning, as another Amtrak train pulled in, nervous, anxious family members were standing by, hoping to see familiar faces. One mother was relieved to see her daughter. About 27 Jacksonville passengers were on the derailed Amtrak train, and we'll have complete coverage on the train wreck beginning on Channel 2 News at 5. Carol?
And now our other top story, just one day after throwing Russia into a stormy political sea by suspending the actions of Parliament, President Boris Yeltsin seems to be riding a wave of public support. CBS correspondent Jonathan Sanders is in Moscow now with the latest on the political battle and public reaction. Jonathan?
Carol, it's surprising. For all the political rhetoric today, Moscow looked like Moscow on any normal day, except the weather was a little better. It was calm on the streets. It was peaceful. The only thing that was really unusual were the pickets outside the Parliament building. Inside the Parliament was trying to get their own people appointed to take over the power ministries in charge of the military and the security police. They've appointed people, but nothing much has happened. What's been really significant is that Boris Yeltsin took to the streets today. Yeltsin was out in a public square. Yeltsin was busy saying that he was not going to use any kind of bloodshed, any kind of violence, any kind of untoward measures to push Russia towards reform. Yeltsin pledged that he was going to try and move Russia towards new elections in December, and said that he already had appointed people to do just those things. His rival, Vice President Alexander Rutskoy, who the Parliament had said was now the acting president, was out too, but not too far out of the Parliament building. He went out to talk to a crowd of people today. He too said that he was not going to use the army. That may be reassuring, but Carol, most of the people here are simply going about their ordinary lives, wondering who's really in control.
Understood, Jonathan. A question about the vast quantities of nuclear weapons in the country. Is there any worry they might fall into the wrong hands right now?
It's a big worry, Carol. Most people on the streets don't seem particularly concerned. They think that Yeltsin and the military has that well in hand. But of course, there are so many weapons here, and the more reassurances people have, the more they worry, because they think if everyone's saying it's so safe, there must be something wrong.
Sounds that way, doesn't it, John? One other question about Wall Street. Yesterday, you know, it took a dive after news of the turmoil. What's this mean for American investors in that country?
I think they're very nervous, Carol, but in some ways the investors have it both ways. Quite clearly, despite the use of terms like conservative and reactionary, most of the people in the parliament and the people around Rutskoy don't want to go back to an old communist past. They want some law and order. In a way, what they might like is a South Korea kind of regime, hard political controls, economic development, and there are some businessmen who might just like that. Carol?
Thank you. Jonathan Sanders in Moscow on the still developing story.
Well, it's been a very busy news day, and back in this country, 7 years after he was kicked out of the United States as an accused Nazi guard, former Ohio auto worker John Demjanjuk is back on U.S. soil this noon. Channel 2's Cindy Hsu reports he arrived at Kennedy Airport this morning after a stormy flight from Israel.
This was the homecoming for John Demjanjuk at Kennedy Airport. Angry Jewish groups and Holocaust survivors who can't believe Demjanjuk is now a free man back on U.S. soil.
I feel betrayed. I feel ashamed. I feel ashamed for the dead and ashamed for the living.
Whether he's Ivan the Terrible, Ivan the Bad, Ivan the Wicked, he's not Ivan the Innocent. And he doesn't belong in this country.
Back when she served in Congress, Controller Liz Holtzman wrote the law making it illegal to allow Nazi war criminals into the U.S. She says Demjanjuk's flight home is breaking that law.
It's a desecration of the memory of the 6 million Jews who were murdered in the Holocaust and the millions of non-Jews. It's a desecration of the memory of the hundreds of thousands of Americans who gave their lives fighting Hitler. This man should not be permitted to enter this country. It's shameful.
The problem is the Israeli Supreme Court acquitted Demjanjuk of being Ivan the Terrible, although the court says there is a lot of evidence that he was an SS guard at one of the Nazi death camps. Still, the court decided not to try Demjanjuk on any more war crimes charges. So the retired auto worker is reportedly on his way back home to Cleveland after spending more than 7 years in an Israeli prison. He spent only a few minutes on the ground at JFK, just enough time to walk from the Israeli airline jet to a chartered plane headed for his home in Ohio. Leah Edgar is an Israeli journalist who was on that first plane with Demjanjuk. She says some of the passengers couldn't stand the sight of him.
One lady delayed the plane for about 13 minutes. She wanted to get off the plane. She said she will not sit. Her seat was behind Demjanjuk and she refused to sit there. And she said, I want to get off the plane. Finally, she was convinced to sit in another chair.
Now, while Demjanjuk is finally going home as a free man, he still faces months, maybe even years of courtroom battles. Number one, he's got to fight for his U.S. citizenship that was stripped when this whole thing started. And number two, there are many, many groups that want to see him back in court having to fight more war crimes charges. In Queens, I'm Cindy Hsu, Channel 2 News.
And now the state of our schools. It's day 3 of the New York City school year now, and while some families may be getting into the swing of the semester finally, a lot of parents are still angry and upset at the way the asbestos crisis is being handled. Our John Slattery's live at one school on Manhattan's Upper West Side to tell us what's going on there. John?
A little bit of good news. The number of school openings continues to increase. At this hour, school officials say that only about 50 schools in New York City remain closed. At this particular school, PS 111, everything is in operation. Here, there are no parents voicing concern, but that is not the case at one school in Harlem.
Parents, school is open. We have a full day of school for all students.
Acting Principal Leon Davis sounded like a town crier announcing that school is open and all is well, but some parents at his school are not at all happy with conditions.
I want to know why they cannot be bused to another school with adequate, proper conditions for teaching.
The school is PS 46 at Frederick Douglass Boulevard and 155th Street in Manhattan. It's in District 5, which has been one of the most outspoken districts during the current asbestos crisis, and today parents were still upset. Outside the school, they posted photographs they took inside classrooms yesterday. The photos show gaping holes that go from one classroom to another, and they show what parents claim is evidence of mice right where children sit.
Mice droppings on the desk, corrosion of the pipes and everything. And I'd like to know why our children have to be taught in this kind of conditions.
While repair work continues to be done in the cafeteria, auditorium, and gymnasium, children's activities are limited, and they eat cold lunches at their desks.
We are trying to get this school closed down at least Thursday and Friday and open up on Monday so that our kids will have a cafeteria, gym, someplace so they can eat and feel safe and not eating in their classroom.
Parents claim that at PS 46, the school construction authority's certificate showing the school is habitable is lost. Yesterday, school's chancellor Ramon Cortines spoke with parents outside a school in the Bronx. He says many parents are confused over the dangers of asbestos, but he understands their concerns about safety and education.
So they want the education to happen in a safe and healthy place. I respect that.
Now, for the latest on which additional schools have been added to the list of those that are open, the Board of Ed is still operating a hotline. And we have that telephone number for you. It is 718-472-1705. The Parents Asbestos Hotline is 718-472-1705. And for bus information, it's 718-392-8855. 392-8855. And for the bus hotline, officials urge when you call for information on getting your child bused, you should have your Social Security number, the child's Social Security number, handy. This is John Slattery reporting live from the West Side. Michelle, Carol?
All right, thank you, John. New York City Controller Elizabeth Holtzman is for the first time apologizing for her handling of a campaign loan. A city investigation called Holtzman grossly negligent for taking a $450,000 loan from Fleet Bank, whose sister company later won a city contract. Until now, Holtzman has simply denied any wrongdoing, but now she says she should have checked on Fleet's business dealings with the city and should have disqualified herself from selecting the bank for a city contract.
Lots more still to come on this busy Wednesday afternoon, September 22nd. Coming up next, police look for an alleged killer who may have taken 7 lives.
We'll have the very latest on that story live from Brooklyn. And then later on, President Clinton prepares to take his health care package to the prime time airwaves.
Well, I think, you know, if you go back and look at the history of health care.
Channel 2 News, sponsored by Pepperidge Farm.
For unforgettable colors, it's always Revlon. Revlon Super Lustrous Lipstick. Rich fashion shades that last on your lips for up to 6 super lustrous hours.
This was covered under our old plan.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one, wasn't it?
Things are changing, and not all for the better. The government may force us to pick from a few healthcare plans designed by government bureaucrats.
Having choices we don't like is no choice at all.
Yeah, they choose.
We lose.
For reforms that protect what we have, call toll-free. Know the facts. If we let the government choose, we lose. Call today.
Manhunt on today for a so-called baby-faced killer, a one-man crime wave of murders, rapes, and robberies. We get the latest now from Chris BORGEN, who's live for us in Brooklyn.
Carol, yes, a nickname of Babyface on the street, but they also say he's a stone-cold, bloody, murdering machine, one who'd as soon shoot you as look at you. Babyface, yes, they said, but also the police say he is the meanest man they've ever met. His name is Richard James White. He is 19 years of age, but because he is small in stature and slight of build, he looks as if he's only 13 years old, 13 with a baby face. But baby face notwithstanding, police say for the past 3 years, Mr. James White has cut a violent, bloody path throughout the neighborhood. Murder, rape, and mayhem, which also includes the April 16th robbery of an armored car. Babyface and 4 accomplices, police say, alleged to have ambushed this armored car as it stopped at Church Avenue in Flatbush. During the course of the botched robbery, transit worker Robert Singleton was shot in the head and killed as the bandits traded more than 25 shots with the armored car guards before fleeing without that $100,000 payroll. And in May of this year, St. Paul's Court in Flatbush, Babyface, alleged to be riding on the handlebars of a bike driven by a friend, supposedly shot down 4 people, killing 2. All because, it is said, he wanted to enhance his reputation. Well, his reputation stands, as we say, as the meanest man in the neighborhood. Police are looking for him not only citywide, but all the way up to Boston, hoping to find him. If you see him, please call the police right away. Live in Brooklyn, I'm Chris Borgen. Back to you in studio.
Thank you, Chris. And meanwhile, police on Long Island are searching for a rapist who may have struck more than 10 times just since June. The man has victimized women between 16 and 48 years old in West Babylon, North Amityville, and Wyandanch. He broke into their homes, raped the women at gun or knife point, then burglarized the homes. Police drew this composite sketch of the suspect and are asking the public's help in identifying and finding him.
Well, when we come back from a break this Wednesday, how one of your child's favorite playthings can become a life-threatening danger.
Dr. Frank Field has a look at balloon dangers in the Noon Health Watch. Stay with us.
Now, Mr. Fidelford, we'll talk about the painting.
Okay.
Now, for the powder room, I want you to match this thread, and don't lose it. It's the only spool I have, and I had an awful time finding it.
I'm really a shy person. It's really weird, but in public I am.
You've seen her bold, classy side. Now, for the first time ever, see Roseanne Arnold's softer side as E.T. gives you an exclusive peek inside her private world. Plus,
as you can see, we haven't aged.
After nearly 20 years and a battle with cancer, hear how the original odd couple, Felix and Oscar, got together.